Officer Derek Vance was a man who collected convictions like trophies, and he didn't care whose life he ruined to get them. When he walked into the Oak Creek courthouse that Tuesday morning, he saw a young black girl in a hoodie sitting on the defense bench. He didn't just dismiss her. He laughed in her face, calling her a lost little delinquent and mocking her family. He thought she was the defendant. He was wrong, dead wrong. That girl was Maya Sterling, the youngest senior partner in the state's history, and she wasn't there to plead guilty. She was there to end his career. This is the story of how arrogance met absolute genius. The rain in Seattle didn't wash things clean, it just made the grime slicker. It was a Tuesday night, specifically November 14th, a date that Leo Carter would never forget for as long as he lived. Leo was 17 years old, an honors student at Garfield High with a heavy backpack and a heavier heart. He had just finished a shift at the local grocery store to help his mother, Elena, pay for his college applications. Leo was driving his mother's 2012 Toyota Camry. It wasn't much to look at. The bumper was held on by hope and a few zip ties, but it was legal. He was driving 5 miles under the speed limit, his hands at 10 and 2, exactly as his father had taught him before he passed away. Leo knew the rules. He knew that for a boy with his skin color, driving a beat-up car in the wrong neighborhood wasn't just a commute, it was a risk assessment. He saw the lights before he heard the siren. Blue and red, flashing violently in his rearview mirror, fracturing the darkness of the rainy street. Leo's stomach dropped. He turned down the radio, which was playing a lo-fi study beat, and pulled over to the curb. He rolled down the window, placed his hands on the steering wheel where they were clearly visible, and waited. He could hear the rain drumming on the roof, a frantic rhythm that matched his heartbeat. Officer Derek Vance stepped out of his patrol car. Vance was a mountain of a man, standing 6'4" with a buzz cut and eyes that looked like cold steel. He adjusted his belt, the leather creaking, and walked with a swagger that screamed authority. He didn't wear a raincoat. He seemed to think the elements should bow to him, just like the people of Oak Creek. Vance shone his flashlight directly into Leo's eyes, blinding him. "License and registration," Vance barked, his voice rough like gravel in a blender. "It's in the glove box, officer," Leo said, his voice trembling slightly. "I'm going to reach for it now. Is that okay?" Vance didn't answer. Immediately. He let the silence stretch, a power play he had perfected over 15 years on the force. "Slowly," he finally said. Leo moved with agonizing slowness. He retrieved the documents and handed them over. Vance snatched them, glancing at the name. Leo Carter. "You know why I pulled you over, Carter?" Vance asked, leaning in, the smell of stale tobacco and mint gum wafting into the car. "No, sir. I was going under the limit." "Broken taillight," Vance lied. Leo knew it wasn't broken. He had checked it that morning. But he also knew that arguing with Officer Derek Vance on a dark road was a suicide mission. "I'm sorry, sir. I didn't know. I'll get it fixed tomorrow." "Step out of the car," Vance ordered. "Sir, for a taillight." "I smell marijuana," Vance said, his voice flat. "I don't smoke, sir. I'm an athlete. I have a scholarship interview on Thursday." "I said step out of the car," Vance shouted, his hand dropping to his holster. Leo complied. He stepped out into the rain, instantly soaked. Vance spun him around, slamming him against the hood of the Toyota. The metal groaned under the impact. Vance kicked Leo's legs apart, patting him down aggressively. "Stop resisting," Vance yelled for the benefit of his body cam, though Leo hadn't moved a muscle. "I'm not resisting," Leo cried out, pain shooting through his shoulder. Vance chuckled, a low, cruel sound. "You people always say that." Vance reached into his own pocket, his movements obscured by the angle of his body and the darkness of the night. When he pulled his hand back, he was holding a small, clear baggie filled with white powder. He held it up to the flashlight. "Well, look at what we have here, Leo. A scholarship athlete riding around with an ounce of cocaine. That doesn't look good for your future." Leo's eyes went wide. The world tilted on its axis. "That's not mine. I saw you take that from your pocket." Vance grabbed Leo by the back of the neck, slamming his face onto the wet hood of the car. "You calling me a liar, boy? That's assaulting an officer's character. Add it to the list." As Vance clicked the handcuffs onto Leo's wrists, tight enough to bruise, he leaned close to the teenager's ear. "You're going to jail, kid, and by the time I'm done with you, the only scholarship you'll be getting is for laundry duty in state prison." Vance laughed. It was a laugh that echoed in Leo's nightmares for weeks, a laugh of absolute, unchecked power. But Officer Derek Vance made one critical mistake that night. He didn't check who Leo Carter was related to. He didn't know that Leo's cousin, who had been adopted by a wealthy family in New York 15 years ago, had just moved back to Seattle. He didn't know that Leo's cousin was Maya Sterling, and Maya Sterling didn't lose cases. 3 weeks later, the Oak Creek courthouse was buzzing. It was a humid morning, the air thick with the smell of floor wax and anxious sweat. The courthouse was an imposing structure of gray stone and marble, designed to make everyone who entered feel small. Officer Derek Vance walked through the metal detectors like he owned the building. He bypassed the line, flashing his badge to the security guard, a man named Frank, who nodded deferentially. "Morning, Derek," Frank said. "Big day." "Just taking out the trash, Frank," Vance grinned, adjusting his tie. "Another dealer off the streets. Kid thinks he can fight it. Pled not guilty." Vance shook his head, feigning disbelief. "They never learn." Vance met up with the prosecutor, Alan Reed, in the hallway. Reed was a sharp-faced man with expensive glasses and a suit that cost more than Leo's car. Reed was ambitious, and he liked Vance because Vance brought him easy wins. Easy wins meant better conviction rates, and better rates meant Reed could run for district attorney next year. "You ready for this?" Reed asked, glancing at his watch. "The public defender is asking for a suppression hearing. Claims illegal search." Vance snorted. "Let them ask. It's my word against a kid from the projects. Who do you think Judge Harrison is going to believe? A decorated officer or a scholarship student with a trunk full of snow?" "Fair point," Reed smirked. "Let's get this over with. I have a lunch reservation at noon." They pushed open the double doors of courtroom 4B. The room was gallery style, with heavy oak benches and a high ceiling. It was mostly empty, save for Leo Carter, who sat at the defense table, looking small and terrified in an ill-fitting suit his mother had bought from a thrift store. His mother, Elena, sat in the row behind him, weeping silently into a handkerchief. And then there was the person sitting next to Leo. Vance paused, his eyes narrowing. Sitting in the lead defense attorney's chair was a young woman. She was black, with her hair pulled back into a messy bun. She was wearing a simple gray hoodie that looked 2 sizes too big, and she was hunched over a stack of papers, scribbling furiously with a yellow highlighter. She looked exhausted. She looked young, impossibly young. Maybe 22? 23. Vance nudged Reed. "Hey, look at that." "What?" Reed asked, organizing his files. "The public defender sent an intern," Vance laughed, pointing openly. "Or maybe that's the kid's girlfriend. What is she doing at the counsel table?" Reed squinted. "I don't recognize her. Usually, old man Henderson takes the indigent cases. Maybe he's sick." Vance walked past the bar, approaching the defense table with a swagger that sucked the oxygen out of the room. He stopped right in front of the young woman. She didn't look up. She kept highlighting, her eyes scanning the police report, his police report, with laser focus. "Excuse me," Vance said, his voice booming in the quiet room. The young woman paused. She slowly capped her highlighter. She didn't stand up. She just turned her head and looked up at him. Her eyes were amber brown, striking and unusually calm. "Can I help you, officer?" she asked. Her voice was soft, melodic, but there was a steel rod running through it. Vance chuckled, looking back at Reed, who was snickering. "I think you're lost, sweetheart. The gallery is back there." He pointed with his thumb over his shoulder. "Or if you're looking for juvenile court, it's down the hall." Leo flinched. "Officer, please." "Quiet, Leo," the girl said. She didn't look at Leo. She kept her eyes locked on Vance. "I'm exactly where I need to be." Vance leaned down, placing both hands on the defense table, invading her personal space. "Listen to me. This table is for attorneys, not girlfriends, not sisters, and definitely not paralegals who forgot to dress for court. You're disrespecting my courtroom with that hoodie." The girl stared at his hands on the table. "Your courtroom," she repeated. "That's right," Vance sneered. "I built the case that's going to put your little boyfriend here away for 10 years. So why don't you be a good girl, grab your coloring book, and go sit in the back before I have the bailiff remove you for obstruction?" The girl's expression didn't change. She simply reached into her bag, a battered leather messenger bag, and pulled out a pair of thin gold-rimmed glasses. She put them on. The transformation was subtle, but instant. The softness in her face evaporated, replaced by a razor-sharp intelligence. "Officer Vance," she said, reading the nameplate on his chest. "I suggest you remove your hands from my table before you contaminate the defense's evidence." Again. Vance pulled back as if he'd been burned. His face flushed red. "What did you say to me?" "You heard me," she said, finally standing up. She wasn't tall, maybe 5'5", but the way she stood made her seem 7 feet tall. She unzipped the oversized gray hoodie. Underneath, she wasn't wearing a t-shirt. She was wearing a tailored, navy blue Armani suit that fit her like a second skin. A silk blouse. A pearl necklace that likely cost more than Vance's annual salary. She tossed the hoodie onto the chair behind her. "I am not an intern," she said, her voice projecting clearly to the back of the room. "I am not his girlfriend, and I am certainly not lost." She extended a hand, though she didn't offer to shake his. She pointed a manicured finger at the empty prosecutor's desk. "My name is Maya Sterling, senior partner at Sterling, Holloway, and Finch in New York City. I am admitted to the bar in New York, Washington, D.C., and as of this morning, the state of Washington pro-hack vice." The silence in the courtroom was deafening. Even Reed, the prosecutor, dropped a file. Sterling, Holloway, and Finch was not just a law firm. It was a legendary institution. They handled Fortune 500 mergers and high-profile constitutional rights cases. They didn't do traffic stops in Oak Creek. Vance blinked, his brain struggling to catch up. "Sterling? You?" He laughed again, but it was nervous this time. "Yeah, right. And I'm the Queen of England. You expect me to believe a—" He stopped himself, glancing at the court reporter who had just started typing. "That you are a high-priced lawyer." "I don't expect you to believe anything, Officer Vance," Maya said, a cold smile touching her lips. "I expect you to take the stand, lie under oath, and then watch as I dismantle your career piece by piece." "You little—" Vance stepped forward aggressively. "All rise," the bailiff's voice boomed. "The Honorable Judge Harrison Sterling presiding." Vance froze. He looked at the judge entering the room, an older black man with graying hair and a stern face. Then he looked back at Maya. Maya Sterling, Judge Harrison Sterling. Vance felt a cold drop of sweat slide down his spine. Maya sat down gracefully, opened a leather-bound folder, and didn't spare Vance another glance. "You might want to sit down, officer. You look a little pale." The courtroom was frozen in a tableau of shock. Officer Derek Vance was staring between Maya Sterling and Judge Harrison Sterling, his mind racing. They're related, he thought. This is a setup, a trap. Panic flared in his chest, hot and sharp. He turned to Prosecutor Alan Reed, his eyes wide. "Objection," Vance hissed, forgetting he wasn't a lawyer. "Conflict of interest. They have the same name." Judge Harrison Sterling banged his gavel once. The sound was like a gunshot. "Officer Vance," the judge said, his voice deep and rumbling. "You are a witness, not counsel. Sit down." The judge then turned his gaze to Maya. His expression softened just a fraction. "Counselor Sterling, it has been a long time." "It has, Your Honor," Maya replied, her voice respectful but devoid of familial warmth. "However, the defense has filed a motion for recusal prior to these proceedings. While I am confident in your impartiality, the appearance of bias must be avoided. As you are my uncle, and the defendant is your distant nephew by marriage, we cannot proceed with you on the bench." Vance exhaled, a breath he didn't know he was holding. "She's kicking her own uncle off the bench?" He smirked. "Rookie mistake. She just lost her only advantage." Judge Sterling nodded. "Motion granted. I have already arranged for a substitute. I will transfer this case to Courtroom 1 immediately." The judge stood up and left. 5 minutes later, the side door opened, and the new judge walked in. The smirk on Officer Vance's face widened into a grin. It was Judge Eleanor Thorne. Judge Thorne was a legend in Oak Creek, but not the kind defendants liked. She was a 60-year-old woman with a face carved from granite and a reputation for handing out maximum sentences like they were candy on Halloween. The police force loved her. They called her the Iron Maiden. She almost never granted suppression motions. She believed a police officer's word was gospel. Vance leaned over to Reed. "We got this," he whispered. "Thorne loves me. I had drinks with her husband at the lodge last month." Judge Thorne sat down, adjusting her glasses. She looked at Leo, then at Vance, and finally at Maya. "I have reviewed the file. A suppression hearing regarding the admissibility of evidence found during a traffic stop. Is the prosecution ready?" "Ready, Your Honor," Reed said, standing tall. "Is the defense ready?" Thorne barked, barely looking at Maya. "Ready, Your Honor," Maya said, her voice cool and steady. "Mr. Reed, call your first witness. Let's make this quick. I have a murder trial at 2 o'clock. Reed called Officer Derek Vance to the stand. Vance walked up the aisle, chest puffed out. He swore on the Bible, looking directly at the jury box, though there was no jury for this hearing, only the judge. He sat down, adjusted the microphone, and gave Reed a professional nod. "Officer Vance," Reed began, "could you walk us through the events of the night of November 14th? "Certainly," Vance said, his voice smooth, practiced. "I was on patrol on 4th Street. It was raining heavily. At approximately 10:15 p.m., I observed a 2012 Toyota Camry driving erratically, swerving across the double yellow line. The vehicle also had a non-functioning passenger side taillight. And what did you do?" "I initiated a traffic stop for safety reasons," Vance continued. "Upon approaching the vehicle, I detected a strong odor of unburnt marijuana emanating from the cabin. The driver, Mr. Carter, appeared agitated. His pupils were dilated. Based on probable cause, I asked him to exit the vehicle. He became combative. During a pat-down for officer safety, I discovered a bag containing 28 grams of cocaine in his jacket pocket." Reed nodded solemnly. "Thank you, officer. Did Mr. Carter say anything regarding the drugs?" "He claimed they weren't his," Vance said with a dismissive shrug. "The usual denial." "Thank you. No further questions." Reed sat down looking satisfied. The narrative was solid. Probable cause, tail light and swerving led to the stop. The smell led to the search. The search found the drugs. Open and shut. Judge Thorne turned to Maya. Cross-examination, counselor. Maya stood up. She didn't pick up any papers. She walked to the center of the room, her heels clicking rhythmically on the hardwood floor. She stopped 10 feet from the witness stand and looked at Vance. She didn't look angry. She looked curious. Officer Vance, Maya began, her voice polite. You've been on the force for how long? 15 years, Vance replied, leaning back comfortably. A veteran, Maya noted. So, you know the law well. You know that for a traffic stop to be legal, you need reasonable suspicion that a traffic violation has occurred, correct? I know my job, lady, Vance snapped. Objection, Maya said calmly, not looking away from Vance. Witness is being hostile. Sustained, Judge Thorne sighed. Officer Vance, answer the question properly, and refer to counsel as Ms. Sterling or counselor. Yes, I know the law, Vance grumbled. Good, Maya said. Let's talk about that tail light. You swore under oath that the passenger side tail light was out, that it was completely dark. It was, Vance insisted. Pitch black, a safety hazard. Maya walked back to her table and picked up a piece of paper. Your Honor, Defense Marks Exhibit A. This is a receipt from Sal's Auto Repair, dated November 14th at 8:30 a.m., 12 hours before the arrest. She handed the paper to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge and then to Vance. Mr. Carter took his mother's car in for an inspection that morning because he intended to drive it to a college interview later in the week, Maya explained. Item line 4. Replace both rear brake bulbs and taillight fuses. The mechanic, Salvatore Rossi, is prepared to testify that those lights were brand new and fully functional when the car left his shop. Vance didn't flinch. He'd dealt with this before. Mechanics make mistakes, he scoffed. Or maybe a fuse blew. It was an old car. It was raining. Things short out. Plausible, Maya admitted. Old cars do have electrical issues, so the taillight was out. You're sure? 100%, Vance said. And you saw this clearly? Yes. Through the rain? Yes. And the swerving? Maya asked, changing tack. You said he swerved over the double yellow line. Twice, Vance lied. Almost hit a parked car. Maya nodded slowly. She walked over to the large monitor set up for the courtroom. Officer Vance, your patrol car is equipped with a dashboard camera, is it not? It is, Vance said. But it was malfunctioning that night. Tech issues. It happens. This was Vance's ace in the hole. He had accidentally forgotten to turn on the dashcam recording until after the arrest. No video of the driving meant it was his word against the kids. How convenient, Maya murmured. It's the truth, Vance challenged. I believe you, Maya said, smiling. That smile sent a shiver of unease through Vance. It was the smile of a predator who had just heard a twig snap. Since your dashcam was broken, Maya continued, we have to rely on your observations. You saw the swerving. You saw the broken light. You smelled the marijuana. That's right. Officer Vance, Maya said, her voice dropping an octave, becoming deadly serious. Are you aware that the city of Oak Creek installed new smart streetlights on 4th Street last month? Vance blinked. What? Smart streetlights, Maya repeated. They are equipped with high-definition, 360-degree security cameras designed to monitor traffic flow and accidents. They are motion-activated, and they upload to the cloud instantly. The color drained from Vance's face. Your Honor, Maya said, turning to Judge Thorne. Defense Marks, Exhibit B, high-resolution footage from the Oak Creek Municipal Server, time-stamped November 14th, 10:14 p.m. to 10:20 p.m. She pressed a button on her laptop. The screen flickered to life. The courtroom was silent, save for the hum of the projector. On the screen, a rainy street appeared. The quality was crystal clear. A gray Toyota Camry drove into the frame. It was moving slowly, cautiously. It stayed perfectly centered in its lane. It did not swerve, not once. "That's the car," Maya narrated. "Note the time. 10:15 p.m. On the screen, the Toyota approached a stop sign. The brake lights flared bright red. Both of them. Then, the regular taillights glowed, a steady, unbroken red on both the left and the right. "Pause," Maya commanded. The image froze. She turned to Vance, who looked like he was about to vomit. "Officer Vance," Maya pointed at the screen. "Is that the broken taillight?" Vance stammered. The angle is bad. Maybe it flickered on and off, like a loose connection." "Let's play it forward," Maya said. The video resumed. The Toyota drove past the camera. Seconds later, a police cruiser, Vance's cruiser, screamed into the frame, lights flashing. The Toyota pulled over immediately and smoothly. No swerving, Maya counted on her fingers. "Working taillights. So, Officer Vance, the probable cause for your stop was a fabrication. A lie." I might have been mistaken about the light," Vance said, sweat beading on his forehead. "It was dark, but the swerving, maybe it happened before the camera range." "The camera covers 3 blocks, officer," Maya noted. "But let's move on. Let's assume you made an honest mistake about the stop. Let's talk about the smell." Maya walked back to her table. "You said you smelled unburnt marijuana. Strong odor." "Yes," Vance said, his voice gaining a little strength. "That gives me the right to search. Even if the stop was bad, the smell creates new probable cause." "Interesting," Maya said. "Leo Carter is an athlete. He is captain of the track team. He is subject to random drug testing." She held up another document. "Exhibit C, a hair follicle drug test conducted yesterday at an independent lab. It tests for drug use over the past 90 days. Leo Carter tested negative for everything: marijuana, cocaine, amphetamines. He has never smoked a day in his life." "So he was a dealer," Vance shouted, losing his cool. "He wasn't smoking it, he was moving it. That explains why he didn't test positive, but the car smelled." "The car smelled?" Maya asked. "Leo's mother's car. Elena Carter creates essential oils for a living, lavender and eucalyptus. Perhaps you confused eucalyptus with cannabis. An easy mistake for a rookie, but a 15-year veteran. It smelled like weed." Vance slammed his hand on the stand. "And I found cocaine in his pocket. You can't explain that away with a video. The kid had drugs." "Ah, yes, the cocaine," Maya said. She looked at Judge Thorne. "Your Honor, this is the crux of the matter. The officer claims he found drugs during a pat-down. My client claims the officer planted them." "He's a liar," Vance yelled. "I am a decorated officer. Why would I plant drugs on some random kid?" "Because you needed an arrest," Maya said coldly. "Because your numbers were down for the month, or maybe just because you could." Maya paused, letting the tension build. "Officer Vance, you said your body camera was malfunctioning, correct?" "Yes, I told you that." "Is it true," Maya asked, "that the new department-issued body cameras, the Axon 3 models, have a buffer feature?" Vance's mouth opened, but no sound came out. For the court's benefit, Maya turned to the judge. "The Axon 3 records video, but no audio, for the 2 minutes before the officer hits the record button. It constantly buffers, saving the footage only when the button is eventually pressed." Maya turned back to Vance. Her eyes were hard as diamonds. "You pushed the record button after you handcuffed Leo, didn't you?" "To record the arrest." I I don't recall, Vance whispered. We subpoenaed the raw data from your camera, Maya said. Not the edited clip you submitted to the DA, the raw file. Objection! Reed jumped up, looking panicked. We haven't seen this footage. It was in the discovery packet I emailed you this morning at 4 a.m., Mr. Reed, Maya shot back. Perhaps you should have checked your inbox before coming to court. Overruled, Judge Thorne said, leaning forward. She looked furious. Play the tape, counselor. Maya hit the spacebar. The screen changed view. It was a shaky, fisheye perspective from Vance's chest. There was no sound. The video showed Vance sitting in his car. He looked down at his lap. In his hands, clearly visible in the glow of the dashboard lights, was a small, clear plastic baggie filled with white powder. A gasp went through the courtroom. Elena Carter covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. On the screen, Vance opened the baggie, dipped his finger in, and rubbed it on his gums, testing the product. Then he twisted it shut and shoved it into his own pocket. He looked up, saw the Toyota passing by, and turned on his siren. The video continued. Vance walking to the window. The interaction. Then, the moment Vance slammed Leo onto the hood. The camera angle shifted as Vance leaned over Leo. The footage clearly showed Vance's hand going into his own pocket, pulling out the baggie, and then pretending to pull it out of Leo's jacket. Maya froze the video right there, Vance's hand holding the drugs, hovering between his pocket and Leo's. Caught in 4K, Maya whispered. She turned to Vance. The officer was shaking. He looked like a ghost. Officer Vance, Maya said, her voice ringing with the force of a hammer strike. Is that your hand? Is that the cocaine you claimed was in my client's pocket? I plead the fifth, Vance croaked. This isn't a grand jury, officer, Judge Thorne interrupted, her voice trembling with rage. You are a witness for the prosecution. You do not have the right to remain silent regarding your official conduct on the stand. It was a sting operation, Vance blurted out, a desperate, insane lie. I was testing him. By framing him for a felony, Maya asked incredulously. She walked up to the bench. Your Honor, the defense moves for an immediate dismissal of all charges with prejudice. Furthermore, I am requesting that the bailiff take Officer Vance into custody immediately for perjury, filing a false police report, and tampering with evidence. Prosecutor Reed was already packing his briefcase. He wanted no part of this. He wouldn't even look at Vance. Judge Thorne stood up. She looked down at Vance with a disgust that could curdle milk. Officer Vance, the judge said, her voice low and dangerous. In 30 years on the bench, I have never seen such a disgraceful display of corruption. You are a stain on the badge. She banged her gavel. Case dismissed. Leo Carter, you are free to go. She pointed a shaking finger at the bailiff. Arrest that man. Get him out of my sight before I hold him in contempt for simply breathing my air. 2 bailiffs moved in on Vance. They didn't look friendly. They grabbed his arms, pulling him out of the witness chair. The sound of handcuffs clicking, real handcuffs on his wrists this time, echoed through the room. Leo Carter jumped the rail and hugged his mother. They were sobbing. Maya didn't cry. She stood by her table, removing her glasses, watching Vance get dragged away. As Vance was hauled past her, kicking and screaming about rights and brotherhood, he locked eyes with Maya. You ruined my life, he screamed, spit flying. You hear me? You're dead, Sterling. You're dead. Maya looked at him with pity. No, Derek, she said softly. I just turned on the lights. But the story wasn't over. Maya knew men like Vance. They didn't go down without dragging people with them. And Vance had friends in low places. As the courtroom cleared, Maya's phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. She answered it. "You think you won," a distorted voice rasped on the other end. "Vance was just the collection boy. You just stole from the family, Maya, and the boss wants his money back." Maya's blood ran cold. The drugs Vance had planted, they weren't just street drugs. They belonged to the Moretti crime syndicate, and Vance was on their payroll. She had freed her cousin, but she had just started a war. The phone call ended with a sharp click, leaving a chilling silence in the cabin of Maya's rental car. "The boss wants his money back." The words bounced around her skull. She wasn't dealing with a rogue cop anymore. She had stumbled into a hornet's nest, and she had just poked it with a sledgehammer. Maya didn't panic. Panic was for people who didn't have a plan. She immediately engaged the central locking system of her car and glanced at Leo and Elena in the back seat. They were still riding the high of the dismissal, oblivious to the sword hanging over their heads by a thread. "Maya?" Leo asked, leaning forward, his voice light. "Who was that? Was it Grandma calling from New York?" Maya met his eyes in the rearview mirror. She forced a smile, though it didn't reach her eyes. "Just the office, Leo. Listen, plans have changed. We aren't going back to your apartment tonight." "Why not?" Elena asked, clutching her purse. "I need to start dinner." "Celebratory dinner is on me," Maya lied smoothly. "I booked us a suite at the Fairmont downtown. Room service, movies, the works. My treat. Consider it part of the legal fees I'm not charging you." She spun the steering wheel hard, taking a sudden left turn, deviating from the route to their neighborhood. She needed them in a building with cameras, security guards, and steel doors. As they drove, Maya's mind worked furiously. The cocaine planted on Leo was 28 grams, an ounce. To a street cop, that's a felony bust. To a cartel or a syndicate, 28 grams is a rounding error. They wouldn't threaten a high-profile attorney over a few $100s of product. Unless it wasn't about the drugs. It was about the pipeline. Vance was a distributor. He wasn't just planting evidence, he was likely moving product using his patrol car as a courier service. Nobody pulls over a cop. By exposing Vance, Maya hadn't just ruined a bust, she had compromised a distribution node for the Moretti crime family. She dropped Leo and Elena at the hotel, paying for an extra security detail to stand outside their door. "Do not leave this room," she ordered them, her voice leaving no room for argument. "I have to file some paperwork." Maya didn't go to the courthouse. She drove to a nondescript diner on the edge of town, a place that smelled of grease and regret. She sat in the back booth and placed a call to a number she hadn't used in 2 years. "Sterling," a gruff voice answered on the second ring. "Agent Miller," Maya said. "I need a favor, and before you say no, I'm in Oak Creek, and I just caught a local cop carrying Moretti product on body cam." There was a pause on the line. Agent Jack Miller was FBI, Organized Crime Division. He had been trying to nail the Moretti family for a decade. "Vance," Miller asked. "Derek Vance. He's in county lockup right now. I suspect he's going to have a tragic accident before morning." "I can't get a protective detail inside a county jail that fast, Maya. The local sheriff runs that house." "Then get him out," Maya said. "Federal custody. RICO witness. Pull his file, fabricate a warrant, I don't care. If he dies tonight, your link to the Morettis dies with him." "I'm on it. Give me an hour." Maya hung up. She ordered a black coffee. She watched the door. Across town, inside the cold, concrete walls of the Oak Creek County Jail, Derek Vance was starting to sweat. He had been stripped of his uniform, his badge, and his dignity. He was wearing an orange jumpsuit that smelled of mildew. He sat on the cot in his cell, staring at the graffiti on the wall. He thought he would be out by now. He thought the union rep would be here with bail money. He thought the fraternity of blue would protect him. Instead, the guard, A man Vance had worked with for 6 years, a guy named Rick, had walked by 10 minutes ago and didn't even make eye contact. Rick had just slid a tray of food through the slot and whispered 2 words. "Eat hearty." Vance looked at the tray. Meatloaf, mashed potatoes. It looked normal. But the way Rick had said it, the heavy steel door at the end of the block buzzed open. A man in a sharp suit walked in. He wasn't a public defender. He carried a briefcase made of alligator skin. The guard unlocked Vance's cell. "Lawyer," the guard grunted. The man stepped in. He didn't offer a hand. He sat on the small metal stool and placed the briefcase on his lap. He looked at Vance with eyes like a shark. "Who are you?" Vance asked, standing up. "Where's Henderson? He's the union lawyer." "Mr. Henderson is unavailable," the man said smoothly. "My name is Mr. Graves. I represent the mutual friends who have supported your lifestyle for the last 3 years." Vance's knees went weak. The Morettis. "Look," Vance stammered. "Tell the boss I didn't mean to screw up. It was that lawyer. She had video. I'll fix it. I just need bail." Mr. Graves smiled, but it was a terrifying, dead expression. "There is no bail, Derek. The boss is very disappointed. You were supposed to be invisible. Instead, you are on the evening news. You are a liability." "I kept my mouth shut," Vance pleaded. "So far," Graves said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small sealed envelope. He placed it on the cot. "The boss is a generous man. He will ensure your wife and children are taken care of. Their mortgage will be paid, their college funds secured." Vance stared at the envelope. "And what do I have to do?" Graves stood up and tapped the envelope. "Inside is a single crushed pill. Fentanyl. Put it in your water. Drink it. Go to sleep. It will look like a heart attack brought on by the stress of the arrest. You die a hero to your family, and they get the money." "And if I don't?" Vance whispered, trembling. Graves buttoned his jacket. "Then you die a snitch in the shower block tomorrow morning. And your family gets nothing. Perhaps they even have an accident of their own." Graves knocked on the cell door. "I'm done here." The guard let him out. Vance was left alone with the envelope. The silence of the prison was deafening. He looked at the meatloaf. He looked at the envelope. He was a dead man walking. Suddenly, the main block doors crashed open. "FBI! Nobody move!" A team of agents in windbreakers swarmed the hallway. Agent Miller strode down the center, flanked by 2 tactical officers. He stopped in front of Vance's cell. "Derek Vance," Miller barked. Vance looked up, tears streaming down his face. Yes, that's me." "You're coming with us. Federal warrant. Obstruction of justice." Vance scrambled to the bars, grabbing them like a lifeline. "Get me out of here. Please. They're trying to kill me." Miller looked at the envelope on the cot. He looked at the untouched food. He looked at the terrified ex-cop. "Looks like we got here just in time," Miller muttered. "Open it up." As they handcuffed Vance and hauled him out, Vance saw Mr. Graves standing by the exit, handcuffed by another agent. Graves didn't look scared. He just watched Vance with a promise of violence in his eyes. Vance realized something then. The FBI could protect him for a night. But Maya Sterling was the only one who could end the war. The safe house was a windowless room in the basement of the Federal Building in Seattle. It was 3 a.m. The coffee was stale, the lights were buzzing, and the air was thick with tension. Maya Sterling sat across a metal table from Derek Vance. Vance looked like a shell of the man who had laughed at her in the courtroom 12 hours ago. He was slumped, pale, and shaking. Agent Miller stood in the corner, arms crossed. "I want immunity," Vance croaked. "You're not in a position to make demands, Derek," Maya said, her voice ice cold. She opened a file folder. I've spent the last 4 hours going through your financials. You're not just a courier, you're a recruiter. You pulled 3 other rookies into the Moretti payroll. I want immunity, Vance repeated, louder this time. Or I don't talk. I'll take my chances in General Pop. No, you won't, Maya said. She leaned forward. Because Mr. Graves, the man who visited you, he's already making calls. He's telling everyone that you turned. Even if you don't say a word, the Morettis think you did. You are a dead man the second you step out of federal protection. Vance put his head in his hands. What do you want? I want the ledger, Maya said. Vance looked up sharply. How do you know about the ledger? Men like you always keep insurance, Maya said. You don't trust the Morettis any more than they trust you. You have a record of every drop, every payment, every dirty cop, and every bribe paid to the district attorney's office. Vance stayed silent. Alan Reed, Maya guessed. The prosecutor. He's in on it, isn't he? That's why he loved your cases. He knew which ones to push and which ones to bury. Vance nodded slowly. Reed gets a 10% cut of everything that moves through the evidence locker. We seize the drugs, log half of it, and sell the other half back to the Morettis. Reed signs off on the destruction orders for evidence that doesn't exist anymore. Maya felt a wave of nausea. The corruption went straight to the top of the DA's office. This was how they had controlled the city for years. They arrested innocent kids like Leo to pump up their conviction stats, while the real criminals ran the show. Where's the ledger, Derek? Agent Miller asked. It's in a safety deposit box. First National Bank, under the name Elena Carter. Maya froze. Excuse me? Vance flinched. I needed a name that wouldn't be linked to me. I stole your aunt's identity from the police database after I arrested Leo. I opened the box in her name. Maya stood up, her chair screeching against the floor. For a second, she wanted to reach across the table and strangle him. He had not only framed her cousin, but had set up her aunt as the fall guy for a criminal conspiracy. You truly are a piece of filth, Maya whispered. She turned to Miller. Get the warrant. Get the box. I'm going to pay a visit to District Attorney Alan Reed. Maya, Miller warned. Reed is dangerous. If he knows Vance flipped, he's going to run. He won't run, Maya said, adjusting her blazer. Because he doesn't know Vance flipped yet. He thinks Vance is dead. The sun was rising over the Seattle skyline as Maya walked into the district attorney's office. The receptionist wasn't there yet. She walked straight back to Alan Reed's office. Reed was there, packing a bag. He looked disheveled. He jumped when Maya opened the door. Miss Sterling, Reed stammered. I was just leaving for a conference. Cut the crap, Alan, Maya said, closing the door behind her. She didn't sit. She stood by the door, blocking his exit. I don't know what you think you're doing, Reed blustered, trying to regain his composure. You won your little case. Go home to New York. I am home, Maya said, and I have the ledger. Reed stopped packing. His face went gray. What? Vance didn't die, Maya lied. He's singing. He told us about the evidence locker. He told us about the 10%. He told us about the Morettis. Reed sank into his leather chair. You don't understand, Maya. You can't stop them. They own this city. They owned you, Maya corrected. And now, I own you. She pulled a document from her bag. It wasn't a subpoena. It was a resignation letter, already typed up. Here is how this goes, Maya said. Option A. The FBI raids this building in 20 minutes. You go to federal prison for racketeering, money laundering, and conspiracy to distribute narcotics. You'll be rooming with the guys you put away. Reed swallowed hard. And option B? Option B, Maya said, sliding the paper across his desk. You sign this. You resign immediately, citing health reasons. Then you turn state's witness. You give us the big fish. You give us Salvatore Moretti. Moretti will kill me, Reed whispered. The FBI will put you in witness protection, Maya said. New name, new life. Maybe a nice quiet job managing a Cinnabon in Nebraska. It's better than a shallow grave in the Pine Barrens. Reed looked at the paper. His hands were shaking. He looked at Maya. He saw no mercy in her eyes, only the cold calculation of a woman who held a royal flush. Why are you giving me a chance? Reed asked. I'm not doing it for you, Maya said. I need Moretti, and you're the bait. Reed picked up his pen. He signed the letter. Smart choice, Maya said, snatching the paper back. She pulled out her phone and texted Agent Miller. Got him. Bring the van. Within hours, the house of cards began to collapse. With Vance's ledger and Reed's testimony, the FBI launched Operation Clean Sweep. But the Moretti family wasn't going to go down quietly. Salvatore Moretti, the head of the family, was watching the news from his villa on the outskirts of the city. He saw the reports of the raid on the DA's office. He smashed his wine glass against the fireplace. Find the girl, Moretti growled to his lieutenants. The lawyer, Sterling. She's the head of the snake. Cut it off. Maya was at the FBI field office when the lights flickered and went out. The emergency generators kicked in, bathing the room in red light. What's happening? Maya asked. Agent Miller drew his weapon. We just lost external power, and the security feed is down. A heavy thud echoed from the lobby. Gunfire. The Morettis hadn't run. They had come to the federal building to silence the witnesses before they could enter the system. Maya looked around for a weapon. She saw a heavy fire extinguisher. Stay down, Maya, Miller shouted, moving to the door. No, Maya said, gripping the extinguisher. I'm done hiding. The door to the safe room exploded inward. The door to the safe room didn't just open, it disintegrated off its hinges. Smoke filled the small room, acrid and blinding. Agent Miller fired 2 controlled shots into the haze, dropping the lead gunman instantly. Maya didn't cower. She grabbed Derek Vance by the collar of his jumpsuit and dragged him behind an overturned metal table. Stay down if you want to live to testify, she screamed over the gunfire. 3 men in tactical gear moved through the smoke, weapons raised. They were Moretti's elite enforcers, sent to silence the leak. But as they stepped into the room, the red emergency lights suddenly cut out, replaced by blinding white floodlights from the hallway behind them. Federal agents, drop your weapons. A dozen laser sights painted the hitmen's chests. The power outage hadn't been an accident. It was a trap. Agent Miller had anticipated the hit. The FBI SWAT team swarmed the room, disarming the enforcers in seconds. Miller holstered his weapon and looked at a stunned Maya. We needed them to attack a federal facility, he explained, shouting over the chaos. Now we have them on domestic terrorism charges, no local. Judge can bail them out of this. At that exact moment, Miller's radio crackled. Target secure. We have Salvatore Moretti in custody at his villa. The war was over. 6 months later, the Oak Creek courthouse was packed, but the atmosphere was different this time. The air was clean. Officer Derek Vance stood before the bench. He looked 20 years older. His arrogance was gone, replaced by a hollow, haunted stare. He wasn't wearing a uniform. He was wearing Department of Corrections orange, with chains around his waist. Judge Harrison Sterling, back on the bench after the corruption probe cleared the docket, peered down over his spectacles. Derek Vance, the judge's voice boomed. You swore an oath to protect and serve. Instead, you preyed on the vulnerable and served only your own greed. For the charges of racketeering, perjury, and conspiracy to distribute narcotics, I sentence you to 25 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. Bang! The gavel struck. The sound echoed like a thunderclap, signaling the end of a dark era. Outside on the courthouse steps, the sun was shining. Leo Carter stood with his mother. He wasn't wearing a suit today. He was wearing a crimson hoodie with Stanford Track and Field emblazoned across the chest. Maya walked down the steps, her heels clicking with that same confident rhythm. She handed Leo a file. "What's this?" Leo asked. "The settlement from the city," Maya smiled. "Tuition is covered, for all 4 years, plus a little extra for a new car, one with working taillights." Leo hugged her, lifting her off the ground. "You saved my life, Maya." Maya adjusted her sunglasses, looking at the clean streets of Oak Creek. "No, Leo. I just reminded them of the one rule they forgot." "What's that?" "The truth always echoes louder than the lie." And that is how Maya Sterling took down a corrupt empire with nothing but a highlighter and the truth. Officer Vance thought his badge gave him the power to ruin lives, but he learned the hard way that arrogance is a fragile shield against a genius attorney. What did you think of the ending? Did Vance get the sentence he deserved, or should it have been harsher? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story of justice served cold, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss a new story. We have a crazy tale coming up next week about a billionaire who tries to buy a bakery but ends up working as the dishwasher. You won't want to miss it. Thanks for watching, and remember, justice might be blind, but it sees everything eventually. See you in the next video.